Leadership growth starts with self-awareness, but sometimes the most valuable insight comes from understanding how others experience your leadership. For a limited time, Cora Lonning Consulting is offering the People Playbook listeners a special 360 Leadership Insight package for $495. This package includes a 360 assessment designed to gather feedback from the people around you, giving leaders a clear review of their strengths, blind spots, communication style, and opportunities for growth. But this is not just about receiving feedback. It is about knowing what to do with it. The package also includes a one-on-one interpretive coaching session with Cora Lonning, where participants walk through their results in a thoughtful, practical way. From there, Cora helps create a personalized action plan to turn insight into intentional leadership growth. Whether someone is a new leader, an experienced manager, or preparing for the next level, this process can help them lead with greater clarity, confidence, and impact. This special offer is available for the People Playbook listeners for only $495. To learn more or schedule a 360 Leadership Insight package, go to CoachCora.com and click on Book a Call.
The People Playbook is for professional business owners and leaders who understand business rises and falls on people. You will hear practical, real-world conversations on clear leadership, smart hiring, and building strong teams, all formulas for retention. Get ready to hear your professional peers and industry experts as they discuss lessons learned and best practices. Get that journal out. You'll be taking lots of notes.
The last episode of the People Playbook, we looked at strength, the discipline, confidence, structure, and support it takes to carry heavy things and achieve record-breaking performance. Strength alone is not the whole story. True performance also requires wellness. Whether we are talking about an athlete, a leader, a caregiver, a team member, people are not built to simply carry more and more weight without recovery, support, and care. Strength does help us rise to the challenge. Wellness helps us sustain the work. And that is where today's conversation begins, at the balance between building strong people and caring for the whole person behind that performance. What it takes to build systems that truly support people, both the people receiving care and the people delivering it. And my guest today is Tia Adaba. She is an RN, a BSN, Vice President of Operations for At-Home Services with ML Healthcare. Tia brings more than 17 years of nursing experience, with much of her career dedicated to home-based care, and that includes home health and hospice. Tia, welcome to the show. So glad to have you. We have been talking about this conversation for a while now, right?
We have. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you. Tia, your work sits right at the intersection between compassion and operations, the two things that often get separated. But in healthcare, and I believe in business, they work together. And Tia, I know you have led efforts that connect to patient satisfaction, staff engagement, regulatory compliance, clinical operations, education, business development, but also sustainable growth. And I'm excited today to talk to you about the People Playbook, 4 S's, strategy, structure, systems, and sociology, because healthcare certainly gives us clear examples of why all 4 matter, and how strategy asks, what kind of care are we trying to deliver? The structure asks, how do we organize people and responsibility so that happens? Our systems ask, what processes will deliver consistency, safety, and accountability? And sociology asks, what is the culture we create for the people doing deeply human work every day? And I'm excited. You're going to provide us 3 specific steps, and we're going to talk about that for a more resilient culture. I can't wait, Tia.
Me too. Me too. I'm very excited.
So you wrote a book, and you boldly titled it, Me First. Let us understand the context of that book and the me first. What does that mean?
Cora, again, thank you for having me on. I do think you couldn't have said it better. It is a bold move to title something Me First.
Mm-hmm.
Because often people think that that's being selfish. If you look at the book, there is an oxygen mask, and it's very intentional because many years I spent on a plane traveling for work, and it always would come up when they talk about the education that goes into, safety while flying. It always says, make sure you put your mask on first before you put it on somebody else. You cannot give what you don't have. So it's not selfish. You have to be able to have it to give. So putting yourself first truly makes you build a more sustainable team without depleting yourself and keeping your wellness in mind. So that's really what's behind the me first.
And I find it so fascinating throughout your book and our discussion, how hard it can be to put me first. And then I love in these steps we're about to discuss that in order to put me first, I have to start with me first. And I have to role model that, right?
Absolutely.
Tia, we're going to talk about these 3 steps. The first one was jump in and learn and why that matters. Well-being is the plan and how we do that and why we do that. And thirdly, about inspiring the team. So let's jump in. Your first step on creating a culture of wellness is to jump in and learn. And what I loved about your explanation of that and our discussion around that is we all know that it's important to set clear expectations. But stress comes when those expectations either aren't clear or aren't relevant. And so you had talked about, hey, you've got to jump in. Where did that come from?
It definitely comes from a personal experience. Often, I always say when there's a challenge, you do tend to learn a little bit more intimate information about the operations in itself in your org. So for me, as a leader, in efforts to gain trust and even understanding, you have to jump in and learn because you have to always know current state before you even start thinking about your future state, whether there's a change that needs to happen. So that first step is really jumping in to understand your current state and be willing to learn it.
Yeah. And to your point, I've heard so many times from regionals in the healthcare and in long-term care, when we're looking to hire, for example, a new administrator. And so the regional goes and sits the building while we're going through the interview process. And one of the things they'll come out of that is, I really have a deep understanding of the building now and who's going to be the best person to come in and run this building. I've spent time on the floor. I've spent time with the residents. I've spent time with the employees. Now I have a deep understanding. They jumped in. And I think that's such a great point you bring in, right?
Absolutely. You have a better insight. You know how to navigate better. You know how to recruit better because you have a better understanding of the team, your process, more so when you were far removed from it. So with every of that opportunity, know that there's some type of learning moments from it that could definitely provide you with better insights.
Absolutely. And lack of clarity creates stress for those that we lead. And if I'm setting expectations and they're not based on my understanding, then they're not going to understand them. And that just lack of understanding where we are, right, current state, is really stressful. We're just creating stress right from the beginning before the work even begins.
Absolutely. When people know exactly what success looks like, they perform better, honestly.
Absolutely.
In healthcare, when you have very unclear expectations, not only does it affect your staff, it affects your patient, it affects outcomes. There's so much that, it's kind of a domino effect.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. This is Coach Cora with Tia Adaba, VP of Operations, Home Healthcare at ML Healthcare. We are on 9:30 a.m. The Answer on the People Playbook, and we are discussing steps to create a resilient culture that sustains what we build. So Tia just presented us her first step, which is jump in and learn. Before you do anything, what is the current state? Your next step, Tia, is well-being is the plan. And I loved one of the things you talked about, and I'd love for you to elaborate for our listeners on this. Don't bottleneck the system with tasks. That's one of my favorite topics.
It's kind of funny because sometimes we hire more people to help the infrastructure itself. However, we have this bottleneck of tasks, or even a good example is, you hire some branch level leaders, you have to have chiefs because everything cannot flow through one human, right?
Right.
And so when you have all of this branch leaders, but you still don't have the trust for them to do the work, what happens is that they always have to say, for example, we have to wait for Tia to make this decision.
Right.
You have not created a sustainable process in no way. You cannot scale it, and you definitely cannot sustain it in any state, really. So it's super important not to bottleneck the system.
Yeah, and oftentimes we put so many steps in place to get approval, to get direction, to get guidance, and it just ends up really dragging on the whole system.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the beautiful things about ML healthcare is just our levels of leadership, not a dig at any other industry, but sometimes there's so many levels that the decision makers are so far removed, and every region is different, so what works in Chicago may not work in Texas. So you definitely have to look at how those decisions are made. Kind of goes back into the learning aspect of it.
Absolutely. If we're clear with those expectations and we set expectations on exceptional clarity of understanding, then we can focus more on the expectations and the accountability than bottlenecking the system with approvals and tasks and high direction. If I'm clear with the expectations and I've given you everything you need to deliver it, then I don't have to have a lot of system drag in between. That's called empowering you to do what you're skilled to do. And
Absolutely.
And stress comes from, if I can't just do my job and do it well, it's stressful. If I have to go ask Tia every 5 minutes and I have to get permission from Cora every hour, I'm not doing my work.
Not productive.
Yeah.
Not productive.
The other thing that you talked about, and I think this is even more important, in the well-being is the plan. So let's not bottleneck it with all these extra things that they have to do. But the other one you talked about, and I think this is a super important one, is you talked about don't allow your growth to outpace your bandwidth. And I think that's a big, and we see it in healthcare. We see it in so many industries. We see it in manufacturing, construction. We're going to grow, but we don't have the bandwidth. And so we just ask more and more and more of people.
Right. Because I think when you're thinking about growth, you have to definitely first understand what your structure is like. Because if you don't have a solid foundation, again, it creates stress for everyone. You also have to think about making sure that you have the right people, the right system, the right support in place before adding more volume.
That's right.
Because if you don't have those things, the volume then creates excessive burden.
That's right.
Which creates burnout eventually.
Absolutely. And there tends to be that ongoing discussion and tension between, do we get the work and then bring the people, or bring the people and then deliver the work? However, in today's market where people aren't readily available, we need to find them, develop them, bring them in, have them ready, and then do the work. There has to be some sort of a runway. And I just had a client where they got this huge contract and didn't have the personnel for it. And it created so much stress, just anticipation of not being able to meet expectations of the crew. But when we were able to go in and say, what's our plan? What's our personnel plan? How do we increase our bandwidth in time? And so when we broke it down by steps, like, let's bring a couple on, they can go do this, and then we'll bring a couple more on, they can go do that. We'll get a little ahead of ourselves. And then when the contract hits, we're ready to go. And
yes, you always have to have a plan.
Yeah, just having that plan, the level of stress that came down with just having a plan And communicating that and having people participate in that was really big.
Yeah. I was going to say one of the most profound things early in my career was in a job interview. And the question was asked about what I was hoping to bring to the org. And I responded, well, I want to be one of the pillars, not the pillar. And making sure that even when you kind of like the four-legged stool, even if once broke it will not break. So what I want to do is build sustainable teams that can function outside of myself, which I know sometimes is a fear for a lot of leaders.
Sure. And, we read articles all the time where leaders are, I'm afraid to not work on my vacation. Can I really go on vacation? I think you can, because the company will be fine. This is Coach Cora with Tia Adaba, VP of Operations with Home Healthcare at ML Healthcare on 9:30 a.m., the People Playbook. And we are discussing steps to create a resilient culture that will sustain what we build. So Tia, we talked about your first step. Hey, just jump in and learn. That's how we're going to be able to set those clarity of expectations based on current state. And that well-being has to be in the plan. Where are we bottlenecking? And let's allow the system to flow. And let's make sure we have the bandwidth for our volume. That will create, those two things create a lot of wellness and proactively reduce stress and burnout.
Yeah.
Your third step then is about inspiring the team. If I set clear expectations based on my understanding, and I've made sure that you are able to deliver on all of that, then you've talked about, now I have to make sure, am I continually teaching and coaching as you're growing to make sure you do have the skills? And then you said, and I have to reward progress. And what I would love to hear from you, because I know how passionate you are about this, some people would call that coaching and development, but you call it inspiring the team. What is so inspiring about teaching and rewarding?
I honestly feel like one of the greatest gifts a leader can give on top of clarity is education. You know, when people, again, do not know what those expectations are, they don't perform at their highest level. And making sure that, you know, as a leader, you do not miss an opportunity to reward progress or their performance. Because even if this person is a high performer, there is value and validation that comes from knowing that your leader sees you and applauds your performance.
And I think from a stress perspective, if I don't know how to do it, that's incredibly stressful. And just that teaching part shows investment in me and builds my confidence, right? Confidence comes with competence. In rewarding the progress, one of the best ways for me to know I'm doing a good job is to hear about it. Not to guess, not to hope, not to wonder, not to come to the conclusion, as long as they're not saying anything, I must be doing something right. But to be validated and to know I am doing the right thing because I hear about it. And then the other thing that I find interesting about your framework for wellness is that peer-to-peer recognition. And we used the example yesterday when we were visiting about this, that let's say we have a family calls you and says, hey, I just want you to know that Sally has been so good with our family in this difficult hospice situation. We're trying to work through a lot of emotions. It's been very tense, very stressful, and she has just been a lifeline for us. And I wanted you to know how much we appreciate her. And we talked about the importance of recognizing Sally, right? But you took it one step further. Talk to us about that.
Yes, I do think it's kind of three parts to recognize it. So as you mentioned, the family calls and says, Sally's great. So your first step is letting Sally know that she has done a great job. Not just to her, you kind of shift that to that second step of recognizing Sally in front of her peers and saying, hey, we got this compliment that Sally's doing a great job. But for me, the more important step is that peer-to-peer, where you allow Sally to share insights. What is it that Sally's doing? Because we do learn more sometimes from peers because you're sitting in that same seat. Mm-hmm. Sally could say, you know what? I text her when I'm 5 minutes out. She appreciates that. Mm-hmm. But before I need to do that, I asked her, what is the type of communication she would like? Nice. And hearing that, it resonates to people that are in that same space doing that same role with her. Definitely. So when we're recognizing, we really have to kind of close that loop in making sure that, what did we learn from this?
And I agree. Peer-to-peer, they understand each other. They're in the same world. And they do learn. And given that opportunity in that space and that encouragement to do peer-to-peer, it's huge. It's huge. This is Coach Cora with Tia Adaba, VP Operations Home Healthcare at ML Healthcare on 9:30 a.m. The Answer with the People Playbook. We're discussing the steps to create a resilient culture that will sustain what you've built. Tia, we have some listening leaders out there right now that might be feeling the weight of performance real heavily right now. What can you share with them? What do you want them to know?
I think as a leader, one thing you should be unafraid to do is asking for help. More than anything, when you ask for help, is being clear as to the help that you are asking for. Mm-hmm. Often we make sacrifices and we feel like as a leader, your performance is weighted on all of your sacrifices and the weight that you carry. But what really is important is the impact you make as far as your legacy as a leader in that org. Yeah. So asking for support is not a sign of weakness. That's resource that you know to ask for, but be very clear as to the help that you need.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Because knowing when it's time for me to get some support in what I'm doing is insight and self-awareness. And it takes the strength to recognize that. And then using the same sense of urgency. Hey, I need this and I need it now so that people are clear. Because I've heard a lot of people ask for help. Oh, could you help me if you have time? If being very clear. Hey,
you throw your hands up.
Right. You got to raise that hand with confidence and say, if you want me to do this, I'm going to need some help. Right. Thank you so much for joining me today, for sharing your experience, your insight, and all that you have learned. I know this is a very personal topic and has a lot of meaning to you. For our listeners, as we close today's conversations, there are 3 important reminders that Tia has brought for us today. First, clear expectations come from clear understandings. We cannot lead people from a distance or by assumption. When we jump in, we learn the work, the people, and we get close enough to know what is really happening. And when we understand the reality of the work, we are better equipped to set expectations that are clear, that are fair, and are meaningful. Second, Tia shared with us that well-being has to be a part of the plan. It can't be an afterthought. It can't be something that we talk about. And it certainly can't be something we address once people are exhausted. Strong performance is not built by continually outpacing our sustainable bandwidth. If we want people to serve well, lead well, and perform well, we have to build the systems, the staffing, the communication, and the support that allow for the work to be sustained. Thirdly, Tia let us know that leaders have to teach the how and reward the progress. It's not enough to set expectations and then hope people figure it out. We have to be there to coach, model, guide, give feedback. And as each progress is accomplished, recognizing that along the way. When people know what is expected and they understand how to get there, they will feel seen for the progress they are making. And that is what motivates them to continue growing. And that is the People Playbook reminder for today. Strong teams are not built by pressure alone. They are built through clarity, care, coaching, and the kind of leadership that helps people meet expectations without losing themselves in the process. Tia, thank you again for sharing your insight today. I appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to the People Playbook. For more information, Coach Cora can be found on LinkedIn and at CoachCora.com. Let's meet here next Saturday, 2 p.m. on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Leadership growth starts with self-awareness, but sometimes the most valuable insight comes from understanding how others experience your leadership. For a limited time, Cora Lonning Consulting is offering the People Playbook listeners a special 360 Leadership Insight package for $495. This package includes a 360 assessment designed to gather feedback from the people around you, giving leaders a clear review of their strengths, blind spots, communication style, and opportunities for growth. But this is not just about receiving feedback. It is about knowing what to do with it. The package also includes a one-on-one interpretive coaching session with Cora Lonning, where participants walk through their results in a thoughtful, practical way. From there, Cora helps create a personalized action plan to turn insight into intentional leadership growth. Whether someone is a new leader, an experienced manager, or preparing for the next level, this process can help them lead with greater clarity, confidence, and impact. This special offer is available for the People Playbook listeners for only $495. To learn more or schedule a 360 Leadership Insight package, go to CoachCora.com and click on Book a Call.